Welcome back again, fellow reelers. It's Integrating Real Perspective Corner, where I review movies, music, and books. And I decided that I was going to deviate a little bit from my Will Smith filmography podcast by reviewing the Monsterverse movies because I had just recently watched my newly bought copy of Godzilla Kong, The New Empire on Blu-ray, which came out just a few weeks ago on Amazon. And so, having now seen that movie twice, I decided that I just couldn't hold off on doing this anymore, doing this entire film review, this entire review series of what is definitely one of the most, if not the most, innovative and um cutting edge film series that I have seen within the last 10, 15 years. I think it was only natural that I was going to be doing a Monsterverse review at some point, and I knew I wanted to start doing it right away after I saw Godzilla Kong: The New Empire on the big screen the first week of April. But I I initially thought that I was just going to wait around and um start from the beginning with the 2014 Godzilla movie with Bryan Cranston and Aaron Taylor Johnson, but I'm just going to jump right in um, with the new Empire in a few minutes. But first, I wanted to give an overview of this franchise, which to me, this is like what the MCU universe is to lots of other people. Nothing against that franchise. It's just I found that first off, there's too many movies in that particular niche, and I just haven't had no interest to keep on top of every movie, every streaming show. It's just not only that, like I grew up with Godzilla. Thanks to an uncle who provided me with a lot of VHS imports and also made dubs for me as a kid. So Godzilla fans seem to, form a pretty unique niche in the cinemaphile community. Whereas, like, Marvel was very easily accessible to people. The Godzilla franchise is something where you had to have special connections with certain family members because Godzilla wasn't really that mainstream when I grew up with him back in the 90s. Well, until of course the that terrible Roland Emmerich American movie from TriStar Columbia that came out in 98, which regrettably I did see on the big screen. But, I was lucky to have seen all the Showa era films from 1954 to 1975, all the Heisei era films from 1984 to 1995, and then the first of the Millennium era, which was Godzilla 2000, which came out in 1999. I saw that one on the big screen too. And I still have the movie ticket for it. In fact, the Monsterverse films restored my faith in American cinema's potential for, believe it or not, yes, making a Godzilla film that respects the source material while actually at the same time being well written and done with superb acting and an art house feel to it. Even if it seems marketed as a Hollywood blockbuster, to just make it more accessible. Like I can't say enough great things about this franchise. By default now, I've become a King Kong fan thanks to the last two, the last two movies. Um, But obviously, like, I'm just going to show you right now, what films, all the films I'm going to be reviewing. So this is the 2014 Godzilla movie, the Gareth Edwards film. Um, this is Kong Skull Island. There's 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. Oh yeah, by the way, Kong Skull Island was 2017. And then 2021's Godzilla versus Kong. And as I showed you, Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. And the last two films in particular have now made me a King Kong fan by default, thanks to the fact that, thanks to this franchise. And the fact is that I've only seen two movies from the Kong universe, as a kid. I saw the 1933 original, and I also saw King Kong Lives from 1986, which had Linda Hamilton in it. So those are the only two King Kong movies that I ever saw in my life. Well, Godzilla, or I mean King Kong versus Godzilla from 1962. But King Kong Escapes, or like the Jeff Bridges King Kong movie from 1976. Still haven't gotten around to seeing any of those movies. But the fact is that this franchise has really grown, steadily better over the last decade. Legendary and Warner Brothers have really gone out of their way to keep things interesting, introducing new mythological threads, new characters, a broadening range of emotional tones. And, speaking of characters, all five films have a rich diversity of great actors. You had Bryan Cranston, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Tom Hiddleston, John Goodman, Brie Larson, Kyle Chandler, Millie Bobby Brown, Alexander Skarsgård, Brian Tyree Henry, Dan Stevens. And speaking of Dan Stevens, um, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire marks the second time that Adam Wingard and Dan Stevens worked together. They both worked together on another movie from 10 years ago that I also really love called The Guest. So I thought, wow, it's like what a marathon of anniversaries Godzilla Kong: The New Empire was, because it's like 10 years ago marked the inception of the Monsterverse series with the Gareth Edwards film, which I also saw on the big screen. So this was a big deal for me to see another Monsterverse film on the big screen 10 years later, and hence why I had to put together this review series today. So I am going to start off just talking about the latest film, The New Empire, just to share my thoughts on that. Then my plan is to actually go back and review the other four movies: the 2014 Godzilla movie, 2017's Kong Skull Island, 2019's King of the Monsters, and 2021's Godzilla versus Kong. So yeah, um, I definitely have to talk about the New Empire while it is still fresh on my mind. Like I said, this is the first time that in 10 years since the Gareth Edwards Godzilla movie that I've seen a Monsterverse film on the big screen. And I gotta say, I am proud of myself for having gone to see this movie in the early part of a week where Waukesha was hit hard with snow, high winds, and overcast days without end. It was also raining really hard too when I went to go see the New Empire. So Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. it- So Godzilla Kong, the New Empire is an incredible continuation of the Godzilla Kong crossover that began with the 2021 movie Godzilla versus Kong. And Just to provide a little bit of background story on that one. Now, Godzilla and Kong have been bitter enemies for almost 6 decades at this point. And this would be the first time that Godzilla and Kong would have to become rivals teaming up together, especially since they would be squaring off against the newly updated Mecha Godzilla, which happened to have been created from the remains of King Ghidorah's corpse from the 2019 King of the Monsters film. So as you can see, it's going to be necessary for me to review the other four movies after this so that you can see like how all the films tie together, like just how all the threads of each story tie together. But um it's also important to point out too that the new Empire goes further than the 2021 movie by turning up the magical, humorous, child-friendly elements that made the 2021 movie, sorry, a departure from the previous three. Those three tended to make darker, heavier tones with more drama and melancholy. But this time, we get a movie that's designed to be more fun. I've seen reviews say that Godzilla Kong the New Empire is like watching a Saturday morning cartoon. It's more like a party between humans and monsters. And what's incredible is how this film essentially takes place on two levels. You have the surface world, which is Godzilla's domain, and Hollow Earth, which is Kong's domain. The Hollow Earth side gets more fleshed out this time around. It was introduced in the 2021 movie. Um, just as you had expected from the way that that movie ended, it left things open-ended so that now with this movie, Kong has set up his permanent domain in Hollow Earth. Now you actually get to see how he rules things and how he rises to officially claiming the king in King Kong, the king title. Also, even the monsters seem to have more human-like traits that are just so animated and full of life. Not that that couldn't be accomplished with a man in a suit, but the CGI effects really do a fine job of doing the micro detail work to make the monsters believable in their behavioral effects. I mean, I would say too that there's also the animalistic side is still obvious, but there's less of a primitive sense with both Godzilla and Kong. Godzilla in particular has become a lot more gentler. I mean, you have a scene where he's taking a nap inside the Rome amphitheater. It's just, oh my goodness, adorable. And just as I've always known, um, Adam Wingard mentioned in not just an interview online, but in the behind the scenes featurettes, that he wanted to model Godzilla this time around after his pet cat. Which, I mean, yeah, Godzilla has always looked like a feline, especially in the 70s Godzilla movies. Look at Godzilla versus Megalon. He's very, very feline-like. Even in the Heisei era movies, like Godzilla and Mothra, the battle for Earth, he always looked very, very cat-like. That's why I was like, he always looks more cute than menacing to me. Depending upon which era of movies you're watching. Um, but um, it's been argued that this movie is uneven in terms of giving both monsters ample screen time. I think they have a pretty equal amount of time on screen, separate and together. It's just that, now you have two monsters having dominion over their own realms. And the thing about Kong's realm in particular is that it reverses the dynamics of gravity, where sometimes he floats in the air and other times he's rooted on land. And when you get to the battle sequence between the two monsters and the Scar King and Shimo, boy, do things really, really get innovative. One thing I've started to notice about these movies is that include Godzilla and Kong both together is that they seem to attract two different types of people based on the psychology of each monster reflected in these two types. The King Kong types are the more domestic types. I've noticed that women tend to love Kong more because he's more of a romantic. And in this movie, especially, he's learning to raise a kid who is basically an orphan, though it doesn't start out that way. Um, the Godzilla types, in the meantime, are mostly men, and these tend to be portrayed as the more stoic, idealistic types who don't like their beliefs trampled on. I guess maybe that's why I've always been more of a Godzilla fan, aggressive and territorial to a fault, but always there as a force of nature to restore balance and help humanity in the face of unseen dangers and menace. And I mean, there is a little bit of Kong in me too, because I am without a doubt a romantic and I'm very much a softie at heart too. So, it's like these two monsters can easily be seen as like an outward projection of our own human nature. And so yeah, that's everything that I have right now on Godzilla Kong the New Empire. And those are just my initial thoughts. And I'm going to come back with a more fleshed out review of that movie. So in the meantime, um, definitely stay tuned and I will keep you updated on individual reviews for the five Monsterverse movies. I will not be reviewing Monarch Legacy of Monsters because I only saw an episode and a half of that, and it was just a free trial that I took advantage of on Apple Plus to see if I even wanted to get a subscription for that channel. It's not worth it. Honestly, the show sucks. It's very flat and one-dimensional. I'm shocked that they even brought John Goodman back for the opening sequence of that first episode. I'm shocked because of the fact that it's connected to the MonsterVerse series, yet the quality of the show is just so dim by comparison. But anyways, yeah, that's it for right now. And yeah, I will see you on the flip side of the reel. Ciao.